What are your favorite things to do with beers?
Favorite things to do with what?
Beer.
What's my favorite thing to do with beer?
Yeah. Drink it and chug it.
Okay.
What is, I mean, isn't that like whenever we drink beer, we
Isn't
end
that
up
what
drinking
everyone does with beer is they drink beer?
Well, most people kind of sip it. You're more of an aggressive drinker and
Okay,
you
yeah.
love to
So
chug.
I drink beer. I didn't know what you were getting at there. Yes,
Yeah.
I drink beer faster than the average bear.
Hello, loyal listeners. Thank you for tuning in to Let Me Speak to a Manager podcast. Today, Frank and I grumble like a couple of old men that we are about the state of customer service in today's world. This podcast was sparked by a conversation the two of us had, after which both of us had just gone through the ringer with different companies but similar experiences. So this episode is us talking about the 10 reasons why most companies are terrible at customer service, why your customer service sucks, and what you can do about it. If you have not subscribed, do it. If you've not told anyone about it, share it. And if you have not given us a review, what in the heck are you waiting for?
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Mathews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
You can't say God on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
What's up, Ian, you son of a bitch?
Man, I have had a shitty couple of days of customer service, Frankie. I'm pulling my hair out, trying to wrap up a real estate deal right now. So I've got some large transactions, and it's as if Bank America has never worked with anyone who has sent a check for more than $2,000 to anyone. I'm at my wit's end. Spent about 3 hours on the phone with 800 numbers yesterday trying to transfer money.
Is this with the collision center closing that out?
There's some of that. I actually have 3 different things going on right now that all require large payments and transfers, and Bank of America can't seem to understand any of them. And since they're all happening at once, they are completely freaking out and thinking that someone stole all my accounts. So they've just blocked everything, which leads me into my typical rage when I deal with that fine institution, which I probably should have dropped them by now, but I have like 8 LLCs. So I have 8 different bank accounts with them. And the one thing they do have is an app that kind of makes it easy to move money in and out of all of it versus like a small bank that would probably give me better service. But oh God, have you ever worked with, I know you work with mainly small banks. Have you ever worked with Bank of America?
So my best Bank of America story is this. In 2000 and I believe it was 8, I had a lot of money in a checking account. I had sold the house, my residence, and I had a lot of money. And this is when the market was going to hell in a handbasket. And I wanted to separate out some of my deposits. So if there was any problems or runs on banks, I was protected. And I mean, I'll just come out and say it. I had like $1 million in an account. And I went to Bank of America. I called ahead. They gave me no fucks. I went there. I sat in the lobby and I sat there for like an hour. And I literally was so pissed off. I got up, drove across the street to a local bank. They had a program called Cedars where they put your, like a tree, they would put your money in one account and then they spread it for you. I was done in 17 minutes and they handed me a lollipop on the way out. And that is the last time I ever worked with Bank of America.
Mm. Yeah.
Now I feel just as bad as about Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo used to be like this pastoral thing. It was only out west. It was cool. It was in like, Back to the Future. It was the horse and the buggy and the carriage. And during the whole short sale process, they suck too.
It's not just big companies that I think are awful at customer service. I think in general, customer service is lame in most places that I turn. I feel like it's an art that is going away. I feel like the more technology creeps into our world, the less people expect of actual human beings being human and trying to treat them well. It's a frustrating situation.
It amazes me that what we now consider customer service is basically just it's such a low barrier of entry to get even considered customer service. An example of it is this: like you and I have talked about this privately, but I love American Express. I like the card. I pay a premium for it. Everyone in my company has an Amex card. I'm an Amex guy. I like it. There's a bunch of reasons I like it. I like the points. I like all the different things. But the thing I like the best about them is when you call them, you almost always speak to someone in America. You get a live voice. If you don't get someone in America, you get someone that's fairly well trained, and you always get a live voice. It's not a bunch of computer automated crap. It's incredible. The other thing they did, Ian, is last year, right after COVID hit, I had like a $350,000 credit limit with them for my business, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Someone called and we don't fill it, but it'll usually be 100 to 250 grand. It's a lot on a credit card, but we have a big business. Someone called me up and they said, "Hello, Mr. Cava. This is so-and-so from American Express. We just wanted to check and see how you're doing." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're just checking to see how you are." Now, in my head, I'm like, she's asking me, am I going to default on this credit card? That's what she's asking. But it was the only phone call that I got from anybody who gave a damn to call me during the pandemic to see how I was. It was staffed out from the top down. It was probably a real temperature check more than it was a caring effort, but it actually felt and confused me enough to feel like customer service where nobody else did a thing.
Yeah. There's a great scene in A League of Their Own where the general manager is frustrated with Jimmy Dugan, the coach. And he says, "Jimmy, if we paid you just a little bit more, could you be a little more disgusting?" And the coach, Jimmy, which played by Tom Hanks, replies, "I could certainly use the money." And I feel like everywhere I turn, whether I'm hiring a contractor, whether I'm trying to find like a new partner for one of the businesses I'm involved in, I feel like saying that to most of them, because I feel like there's just a general apathy around trying to delight people that you spend money with. That's just about anyone I hire to come do work at my house. That's I just, everywhere I turn, I see it. And so this episode is why your business sucks at customer service. We have 10 items that we've listed out, and we really only have 10 because we don't want this to be a 4-hour episode. It could have been 30, 40. We just kept listing things that drive us crazy as we were preparing for this episode.
Yeah, for sure. I think let's get into it.
So I feel like you can't really start this conversation without talking about how the employees in the company feel about coming to work. So number one for me, and this probably goes to any team I've ever run, whenever I've had a problem with customers complaining a lot, it usually stemmed from the fact that my employees didn't like coming to work. Whenever I had a morale issue, whenever I had a retention issue, and mostly that starts with I had the wrong managers in place. For me, at least, that was usually the case. Is I had promoted the wrong manager. They were over in office. That office's customer service quickly declined. And when you went and talked to the employees, you could see that it was lockstep with the way they felt about coming to work.
For sure. So for me, the bad customer service or bad morale started with when I had my business and it first started, my first few employees. We didn't really have a company culture yet. We didn't have, I couldn't afford the level of employee I can afford now. And because of these things, I was nervous when there was outward contact of someone that was representing my company with a customer. Now, decade plus later, we have health insurance and benefits and 401k, and we attract and pay way more, and the talent level has gone through the roof. And now I feel much more comfortable. When a situation does come up now, I feel something that would have caused me to lose sleep a decade ago. Now I'm like, okay, we got the right system. It might be an annoyance, but I know we didn't do something fundamentally wrong. And if we made a mistake, we can fix that, but we're not making fundamentally bad decisions that are going to cost us, major opportunities or a lot of time.
It's, you can imagine, put yourself in an employee's shoes. If you just hate coming to work, you hate your boss, you hate your teammates, you don't like being there, it's impossible for the customer not to feel that when they talk to them, right? We're all human beings. So, you can't just shut off how you're feeling. And on the contrary, if you love coming to work, if you laugh with your teammates all the time, if your boss is always pumping you up, getting you in a good mood, you just like working for your boss, you're comfortable for them, that's also going to rub off on how the customer feels, because they have to interact with you when they go through it. So, places like the DMV is always the whipping boy when you talk about bad customer service. But you look at it, it just looks like a miserable place to work. They pay people the lowest they can possibly pay in a government office. You sit on your ass all day and, call out numbers for people coming. Their technology sucks. There's nothing inherently fun about working there, and people feel it. It's bad restaurants. We talked about banks. They don't look like fun places to work.
City Hall. I can't think of a city hall I've ever been to that was any good. Like the only two experiences in my life where pulling a permit was actually enjoyable was Prince William County and Fairfax. And both of those counties are insanely well run and they have a lot of revenue. So they pay people like if you walk into the permit office in Richmond, it's in a flipping dungeon. It's a dungeon. It's awful. In Prince William, it had huge windows that they looked out at. It had a counter. The people were friendly, but it's very often that you're just stuffed in some broom closet, and it's not a good place to be, and people hate it, and you feel it. The service sucks. The product is terrible. It takes them forever to do things. It's just bad.
There's a baseball tournament that we go to on a regular basis, where the interactions between the umpire and the coaches are just always laced with friction. But it's real obvious why it happens, because at this one specific tournament, the parents always seem out of control at yelling at the umpires. It's just this town that we're in, they're adversarial with umpires. And so the environment for an umpire at these baseball games is awful. No matter what call you make, everyone's chirping at you, yelling the whole time. And so if you try to call timeout and go talk to an umpire at these tournaments, the umpire immediately has their guard up because they're just in a bad mood. They don't like working these tournaments. And so they'll start fighting with you right away. Even if you treat them the same way you would at anywhere else and you just try to go out with respect, have a conversation, I noticed that it turns into a fight. But I also noticed the whole game, there's just a different level of animosity. And it makes you think, if the environment you're in sucks, you're going to treat the people that you're supposed to work with a little bit worse. And so the best way to improve customer experience, if you're a manager, if you're a company, is to make your employees feel a little bit better about working there. That's treating them a little better. If you're an executive, go look at your managers, and if they're losing people on a regular basis, figure out why. It's either training or you probably just promoted the wrong people into management roles, but do something about it. You can physically change the way people feel about going to work. And if you do that and you make them a little happier about showing up, customers aren't going to feel like garbage. They're not going to be treated that way.
That makes perfect sense. And I did a webinar yesterday for a different set of reasons on team building. And when you build a team in the beginning, it's very hard to find the right talent. Now, I think there's two ways to go about this. If you have capital and you're well funded, you can start at the top. But most people who start businesses kind of bootstrap their way up, and you kind of have to find who's willing to work there. One of the major things I see through the mastermind group is these people are hiring very low qualified people. So you have the wrong person, you don't have any culture, the people don't know what they're doing, they're not well trained, they can't like what they're doing because there's a ton of uncertainty surrounding it. And because of that, it's just a mess. It's very hard to build momentum. There's always problems. There's constant turnover. And if you're having those internal conflicts during the course of your day, there's no way in hell the customer can feel good.
I've had offices that have completely turned around in 6 months with the way your customer service ratings were, just by simply replacing a manager with someone who was really good with customers. Didn't do anything else, put no other effort into it, didn't have a big customer service summit, didn't do training, didn't do anything, just changed the leader to someone who was good with people. And all of a sudden customer service got better. So number 2, companies that look at technology as just a cost savings. So how do we get the best return on our technology instead of looking at technology to enhance the customer experience? So I think one that for me that sticks out that was good at this was Quicken Mortgage with Rocket Mortgage. They spent millions of dollars on that, tens of millions of dollars for years before that app came out. No return. They weren't a publicly traded company, but they built Rocket Mortgage to give customers the fastest possible loan application approval and closing period. That's all Dan Gilbert wanted out of Rocket Mortgage was we are going to make the loan application process much less miserable because it sucks. They took all this feedback from customers of what they hated about the loan app process, and they built an app based on, eradicating all the problems, and they killed it. Their app was really good and it worked what they did, but it had nothing to do with cost savings. There was nothing, they spent years before they ever made a penny on the thing, but they killed it. And that app came out and they just crushed market share. They crushed everyone. Word of mouth was hot. People go to party, be like, oh, I used Rocket Mortgage. It took me 10 minutes to do a loan app. I never even met with anyone. They didn't even call me. I just got an approval a couple of days later. Then I talked to someone about a rate. They did make it really easy, but they didn't look at technology in that app as a way of how can we get rid of more loan officers? How can we get rid of more processors? Now, ultimately, did they do that?
That's what happened.
Yes, 100%. When the app proved that people didn't need to talk to people as early, but initially they kept just as many people, if not more, because they had explained the technology a little bit to customers and people weren't ready to not talk to someone. So they kept everyone, but over time they were like, people really don't want to talk to us as much. So we don't need as many people, and it saved them money. But they used technology initially to delight customers and get more revenue, not to save money.
I think that's a great way to talk about it. I think Rocket Mortgage, it's an awesome way to think about it. I think another example that just popped in my head that I can think about is Carvana. Carvana is very similar too, right? And where our new office space is, there's a Carvana going up there. So I'm watching it kind of come to our market, but they take out the frustration and the hassle. Like, who are the biggest scumballs on the planet? It's used car salesman or car salesman. You always feel like it's just ugly. And the mortgage process was ugly and time consuming. Carvana's taken technology and made it stronger. Like, you're going to buy probably your second most expensive investment. A house is usually first, a car is usually second, and you're not going to touch anybody on both of those two transactions. That's a big deal because people have looked at it and said, okay, this was a pain point and we can streamline this using technology. I can say on the bad side of technology, like whenever you get into one of those phone trees and you have to push buttons, and then ultimately the person who answers the phone is not from this country, like I wish I could just measure my blood pressure while that happens. Like, it immediately starts going up. Like, I'm getting more.
Feel it, Frank. Can't you feel it on those 800 numbers when they're trying to make it seem like they're giving you options to make it easier on you? But it feels to me like they're trying to make sure that you don't waste one of their employees' time so they can cut more people out of their organization, and you just keep hitting buttons. It's like when you keep hitting 0, help, they won't even let you go talk to someone. It's really clear they're just trying to not spend money. So we're going to use this automated system and keep you in this tree forever.
That's one. Like, I'm a DirecTV guy, and I used to love DirecTV when it was DirecTV before AT&T bought it, because you'd always speak to someone in America. And I would always ask, where are you? I'm in Oklahoma, I'm in Iowa, I'm in Tampa. And now you get somebody overseas and you can't get a damn thing accomplished. The other thing with tech is, like, they put you through that bridge or that board, like you're on American Airlines or Delta and something goes wrong with your flights, you call. And they're like, your wait time is 5.5 hours. Like, like, give me a break. Like, I can fly from New York to halfway to Australia, and that's my wait time. Like staff up, for God's sakes. So when we were smaller, what we did is we used to outsource our call answer. And we would outsource our call answer to just a phone center in, I think it was Georgia. And
so your business, explain your business real quick. So you spend tens of thousands of dollars every month on postcards, marketing. So you have all kinds of inbound people who saw an advertisement that are calling to see, could we sell our house to Cava? What would you buy? And so instead of direct employees working for you, picking phones up as these leads come in, because I imagine speed of which you answer a call is critical. They'll call someone else. These are people usually desperate to try to do something quick. So you tried to outsource some of this offshore instead of your own employees?
So I tried it onshore, offshore, and then back onshore before I built it from the ground up. And building it from the ground up is a daunting task. First of all, you got to train these people. You got to teach them. You got to give them a script. It's expensive. But the first contact point that anybody has with my company today is someone who's on our team call, who's passed several tests, who is interviewed, who we think is a cultural fit, we think is smart, is a customer focus. And now we've turned this position into a feeder ground for promotion. So the people who start at the bottom in this role can move into other roles. We've got people that have been promoted 2-3 times in the last 18 months since we started this. But when I first started, we didn't have all that sophistication. We didn't have the ability to do that. So we just went to a call center and we gave them a script, and basically we said, hey, put it into the CRM, which is your back office, your
where were these people located? India?
No. They were all in America. They were like in Georgia and Florida, and but they were making $8-10 an hour, and they were awful. They may as well have been on the moon or Mars. They were terrible. And like, I would call in, and my name is Frank Cava, and the company is Cava Capital. And I'm like, hey, I'm Frank Cava calling just to check on this. They're like, okay, how do we route? Like, they would ask me the questions. Like, they couldn't realize like I was the owner of the company. Like, they were so bad. There was these weird pauses and these like all this crap.
Because all they had was a script. So if a customer asked a question that wasn't on the script, they just mangled it.
And the worst part, Ian, it was kind of like when you call the airlines, you got to push a bunch of buttons. You got to get moved over here. There was always these pauses and delays. And what we do now is we answer the phone 80% of the time live, 80%. Yeah. And what we are able to do is we're able to spend more money on advertising because our capture rate is better. Like, if someone calls in off of a TV ad, you don't want to send them some crappy call center. You want someone on your team who's trained, who can actually answer questions, that is educated, that knows what we do, knows our product, can talk to them. So we went from
even worse than customer service. A lot of times you think about customer service, Frank, it's a customer who's already paying. You were mangling customers before they could even spend revenue with you. So you were losing straight out business.
Correct.
So a lot of times you probably didn't even hear about how bad the experience was, because they were just like, this sucks, I'm out.
That's it. And what we've done is we've gotten to be a much better company, a much more profitable company, because we invested in it. We invested in customer service upfront. On your first touch, it feels so much better than it used to. And now our business and our space has gotten much more crowded, but we really stand out because you can feel that people on the other end of the phone know what they're talking about. In addition, Ian, what we do now is we audit every call. Like, we didn't used to do that. Now we check, we train on it. The whole team listens to calls together. They say how they could do a better job. Like that. We want there to be the opposite of that phone call where you feel terrible when you get off the phone. We want you to feel good. We want you to know that if you've come to us, we are going to take care of you, and your problem, you can stop looking. We are your best option. That's what we want to communicate on the phone.
So there's, you're talking a little bit about offshoring, whether it's Georgia or Philippines or India. You kind of feel it when someone's removed from the action. I think that's what you feel is they don't feel like they work for the company. They feel like they're just taking notes when you call. And I think, for me, number 3 is just important is within an organization, you don't need to go outside of your organization to make people feel that way. So a lot of companies, especially when they get bigger, they try to centralize certain functions. And I feel like that's a really good strategy on things that don't interface or impact a customer. So
The customer, right?
Accounting, IT, those are good areas to centralize. Having a core group of people near each other working together, there's a lot of synergy that comes out of that. And I think that actually ends up being a better experience for the organization in a lot of cases. But when you get into departments that are customer facing, when you centralize, I've always felt like the experience gets much worse. I worked for a home builder and a mortgage company, and some of the most friction in our entire company was always between our underwriting department and our offices. And the problem was our underwriting was housed mainly in an office in Pennsylvania that never saw people who worked in branches, never talked to customers, never saw anything. So they had this kind of silo mentality. And what was interesting, Frank, is we had remote underwriters in pockets. So we had one of our departments was we had 5 or 6 underwriters in our Cleveland branch. So they interacted with processors, loan officers, people who talk to customers all the time, the home builder. And whenever we did ratings on the best underwriters to work with, it was always the folks that were out in an office because they had perspective. They had empathy for how hard the job was because they could hear over their cube a processor getting chewed out by a customer on conference call. They could hear a Ryan Holmes manager coming in and grumbling at a loan officer that they were doing a lousy job of getting an approval and they were going to cost them a sale. They had this perspective that our centralized department just never had. And for that reason, our centralized office in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, always had a poor brand, a poor personal brand, whereas in the underwriters that were out in shops, they were loved because they just treated people with a little better empathy, a little bit more respect.
The soft costs are hard to measure. It's the only way you can put it. It's very hard to say, okay, we've offshored this and we centralized this. The empathy piece is clear, but you think you're saving money, but what are you actually losing? And I can tell you a funny story. So around 2014, 2015, I'm at the mastermind and I'm just a member at the time. And there's a country guy from North Carolina and he talks with a drawl from North Carolina and he goes, you know what? He goes, I realized I needed to think about my business and then restructure it because my entire call center business was relying on 2 guys in a cave in Afghanistan. He goes, the wind goes, they lose the internet, they don't speak English. He goes, they're the most critical part of my entire business and I've offshored all of it. And there's some truth to that. You see it in big business and you feel it wrong all around you. And what we now measure as good customer service is simply just service. The bar has been lowered so much, but if you can streamline it and put people who are educated, understand, have empathy, the empathy is the thing that can help the most. I was taking a flight back from Phoenix about 90 days ago, and my flight was supposed to be on Friday afternoon. It got delayed. And they end up canceling it. I go back Saturday. I get there at 9:30 in the morning. At 5:30, I leave the airport. My flight had gotten delayed the whole day and ended up ultimately getting canceled. I ended up flying out Sunday. I mean, I'm getting home 48, 50 hours after I was supposed to. The woman at Delta that I finally got on the phone with was incredible. She was bubbly. She was sweet. She apologized. She actually called me 2 weeks later and followed up. I still was pissed. I lost 2 days of my life, but I'm like, this is the best possible outcome. And the thing that she had is she had empathy. She made it seem like she missed her flight too. And I think, Ian, when you centralize, you lose empathy because people don't understand or have the experience that people who do the job have.
So let's talk about this. So you're a manager, you're managing a company, you've got a problem with this. I would say centralizing can work. You have to make a concerted effort to drive some of that empathy into your organization. The way you can do that, you force interaction between that centralized department and the department that it supports. You get them out in the field every once in a while. Maybe twice a year, you send them out into the field for 3 or 4 days to spend time with the team they support, understanding how can we support you better. You put a manager in there who thinks of the departments they support as a customer, who is trying to listen to them as a customer. How do we do a better job? You measure them on the service that centralized department gives to the organization that it supports. Because I think a lot of times those centralized departments, they get so siloed that they don't think of it that way. They don't think of,
Right.
Okay, we support a department who supports customers. So in turn, we support customers by supporting the people on the front line. And a lot of times those silos, they don't think of themselves that way. They think of themselves as all powerful, as gatekeepers, and they start to build a reputation as, the order prevention business, the people that are in the way of getting business, instead of how can we become an accelerant? How can we become an enabler of good service, of more sales? How can we provide service to the people who provide service to customers?
Nearly every business can lose focus of its mission. You've talked here about how at Keep, it's a technology company, like the engineers have gone sideways and gotten into all, like, we're not even putting out the product we want to put out. Like, this happens everywhere. So it comes down to experience, being looped in, being part of a bigger picture, understanding what's going on around you, having management, liking what you're doing, feeling like what you're doing is making a difference, and, constantly being reminded, like, this is the whole purpose here of this is why we're here.
I love it. So number 4 is you measure your people too much. I can feel when I'm interacting with someone who has way too many reports that their manager cares about, because it feels like they're trying to force in a bunch of side conversations. For me, the best example of this is I had to go to Best Buy yesterday. I had to get a new printer, and Best Buy is the worst at this. Like, they take you to the counter and it's like, are you a Best Buy member? Are you an awards member? Would you like to be a Best Buy? Are you sure? Well, today, could I tell you how much you would save if you were a Best Buy member? And it's like, how many times can I say, no, I don't want that. And then as soon as that's over, I see here that this is a $500 purchase. Would you like to pay another $85 for the extended warranty for 4 years? No, you cut them off. No, I don't want to pay $85 for your warranty. Well, you do understand that, with printers, these things can break sometimes. And no, I don't want the warranty. Third time, keeps asking me about the warranty. I'm like, dude, I'm not getting a membership or a warranty. Check me out. And so then it gets awkward, and you feel sort of bad because it's his manager up his butt. And I bet there's some report every morning of how many people checked out, how many memberships did you sign up, how many warranties did you close. But it makes me feel like you're making this process, you're making me say no so much. It makes me feel bad. Like, you're just making me miserable sitting here. Then when all this is over, Frankie, he launches into you're going to get a survey. And then he shows me on the receipt where you're going to get the survey, what his name is. And I'm looking at him like, do you want me to really fill out that survey? Like, the way this just went? And it's just, to me, it's clear there is some dumbass manager at Best Buy that is all over this poor kid. He's just a kid working at Best Buy. But my experience was fine up until the checkout, when the manager creeped his way into making my process end on a miserable note.
And it probably comes from above the manager. The manager is probably as, much of a stooge as the kid at the counter. It's coming from, from up top and corporate, and they think this is important. And it's again, customer service has reached such a level where, like, just simply just doing something decent. Have you ever gone to like a bank? That I hate banks, and I don't go to them very often. Like I might have to go to a bank like 2 times a year. I send somebody from my office. But literally, like they ask you all these questions that are like, it's almost like a comedy skit. They're asking you the questions at like the wrong time. Well, I'm glad I was able to help you provide the service you were looking for today. I'm like, you haven't. If you gave me a satisfaction survey, I would go to the left of 0. Like it's ridiculous, but that's kind of where we're at. And what I see that I think is funny, and is this, I see this a lot in my consulting. You have no measurables. So you're going to put measurables in place, and you start with this incredibly granular stuff. It's like, no. If you're going to measure something you haven't measured, let's start with the big picture stuff. Let's start wide and kind of narrow it, not the opposite where you get super, super, super narrow. It's kind of like, if you look at any dieting information, what they say is like change a couple of things that are small that you'll barely notice, and that'll help you work your way to, where you want to get. It's the same thing with measurables. You have to start with the macro stuff, the big things that you can control, and then you can start focusing on the little things. For us, it was how many times do we answer the phone live with a Cava employee? That's a pretty big one. Once we change that, then we can work on a lot of the littler things.
So I think that's awesome. So number 5 for us is on this agenda, and you started to get into it already, is you're more focused on the survey result than the actual experience. So if you're going to measure something, and what I see companies screw up is the CEO gets some JD Powers report showing that they're 6th out of the top 10 in their industry at customer service, and it's not great. And they get frustrated and they say, we're going to measure more on results. We're going to put it in all the managers' bonuses. I saw MBR do this all the time. Right. It would come and go. Customer service came and went all the time in bonuses. And the madder the CEO was about our customer service, the more people got customer service put into their bonuses. So we're going to pay on customer service. We're going to pound it. And so instead of focusing on the experience, what happens is all those managers start reading every survey. They start looking at every report, the scores. They start putting more pressure on how many surveys did we get back? We just need more. We need more surveys. We're not getting a good return rate on our surveys. And so the one thing you're trying to do is make a good experience. You actually make it worse by pressuring everyone to make people fill out surveys. I literally, you brought up a bank. So this just happened to me at a bank last week, and it wasn't me. I'm waiting in line. Everything's spread out 6 feet apart. You're waiting in the bank lines now. And I just needed to wire a couple of different funds. And I'm listening to this older couple. They're probably in their late 70s. And they are complaining the whole time I'm there about how bad their experience was before they got to this other rep. All the different things Bank of America screwed up. They're with like a private banker. And I'm listening to this. And they didn't seem like just pain in the butt people. They seemed genuinely upset with the way they were treated. And for good reasons. As I'm listening to them, like, oh, this sucks. Like the experience they put these people through. So this, lady who works there takes them through, ultimately, I think gets them to a better place. And that was great. But then as soon as she resolves the process after I'm listening to this for 20 minutes,
here comes the survey.
Into the survey.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need you to understand, when you get that survey, you're not grading the people that were before me, you're grading me and my service. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking their experience was goddamn miserable. Now I got to listen to this rep sell these people and give them a guilt trip that if you put a 1 on that survey, understand my manager, and she must have said my manager 5 times. My manager will be all over me. And look, you can write whatever you want in the comments, but here on the 1 through 10, if you don't give a 10, my manager will be all over me. Just kept saying it. And I'm just listening to this like these 78-year-old cute little couple gives a flying shit about what they write on your survey or what you're like, you just treated them. And the worst part is I'm listening to, they're like, you've been great. We're going to make sure to give you a good survey grade. And I'm just cringing like, this is moronic. These are just a-holes running this place.
Here, try and pitch me on filling out the survey for you.
What if I were doing it?
Yeah, like you're at the bank, just you're the person at the bank, pitch me. I'll tell you like how I handled this.
Hey, Frank, you're going to receive a survey in the email, and it's going to reflect the service that I've given you, and it would really mean a lot to me.
You can go ahead and stop there. I'm not going to do it. If they ask me why, I'm like, I don't have the internet at home. Have a great day.
Totally. I lie. I just say, I got you. And I fist pound them, and then I delete it when I get the email.
You crinkle up the receipt and throw it in the trash.
Easier than starting another discussion.
Crinkle up the paper and then reach over the counter and be like, you got a trash can back there, and drop it right in front of them.
So number 6 on our list is, I think this one definitely comes down to management and a business that has too many controls and too many micromanagers. So number 6 would be no one in the company is allowed to make decisions except for managers. So what this leads to is you've got managers who don't trust their employees. And so if a customer asks for something that is even a little bit out of the box, every one of those things has to come to a manager. And this isn't just price. That could be anything. It could be terms. It could be timing. It could be a date change. But you can very much feel it when you're talking to someone in a company who has zero ability to help you, and everything has to be all have to talk to a manager. And that what that ends up doing is it leads to delays, a lot of people saying no to you, a lot of people that can't negotiate, that can't ask the right questions. It feels very frustrating when you work for a company that is very clear that the employees that talk to customers are just pawns and the real decision makers are somewhere behind a curtain.
What I hate in that interaction is like the person is a good meaning person. They're just trying to make a living, and it feels like they have no footing around doing anything. Like they're thinking through their head, like, what line did I memorize that I need to say here? It's like I would rather work with a computer screen than a human in that instance, because a computer screen is going to be better programmed. So it's like it's terrible. Like right now, there's all this like pent up demand for people to get out of their house and travel. So I usually fly with Hertz. I usually rent with Hertz. I use the club called Gold. I don't have to talk to a soul. It's all on the computer. I walk up, I get my keys, I get in the car. But I like to drive a certain kind of car, and the only other company that really has that besides Hertz is Enterprise. So lately I've been having to rent with Enterprise, and it's awful. Like you work with these poor kids that are just clones. Like someone showed up at campus and convinced them to take this job, and the kid can make no decisions. It's like they read you this like, and then they explain like, this is where the gas pedal is. Like, yeah, no shit. I've been driving for 30 years. Like, this is how you use the power windows. Like, just hand me the keys, man. Like, I don't need this. Like, I'm competent. Like I'm renting a Mercedes. I can afford it. I know how to drive. I have insurance. Like, get out of my way.
Yes. So opposite here. So I think a big problem in a lot of companies where customer service sucks is the executives have built a really wide moat around their office and the actual customer. So these are executives that just don't talk to customers. Their whole knowledge of the customer experience is based on reports and data and information they hear from other people without actually interacting with people that purchase from their company. We had a president, Frank, that we had a problem with staffing in our underwriting department. We didn't have enough staff. And so they were overwhelmed with requests, and we were growing too fast. And so this executive, in his infinite wisdom, put in a process where every office only had 3 requests for rushes on any given day. That was it. And on some days that was fine. On other days, like the end of the month, might be closing 20 settlements in a day.
We both said the same time, this end of the month, the end of the quarter.
That might mean that 17 customers who had a little issue at their closing table were moving until the next month. So immediately,
which is a big deal.
Me and every other senior executive that reported to him said, this is going to die in a fiery death, this idea, like you can't do this. And he was so frustrated. He put his foot down. He said, well, something's got to change, and you guys need a little bit of tough love to get ahead of things. We were like, we're cool with tough love. This will blow up and you will go back on this in a month. So be careful, and he didn't listen, put out an email. Here's the process. We kind of called it the golden ticket process, where you only get 3 golden tickets like Charlie Wonka. So we put it in place, and Frank, within like 3 days, it is an absolute disaster. I'm a senior executive. I have like 400 people that report to me. I haven't talked to a customer in months. And all of a sudden I talked to like 7 customers on the second day this thing was put out, because people, like the people in front of me that normally would handle the customer issues, had no control. Like they were stuck. So they just wouldn't know what to say. And they would be like, you're going to have to talk to someone higher than me because I don't have any control. So they all got to me. So I was pissed. So you know what I just started doing? Because I had no control over it. I just started giving his name and phone number to everyone. I suggest you call our president. And I would give him his name and his direct phone number. I'd never done this any point in my career, and all the other regionals conspired to do the same thing. We all just started giving his name and phone number to any customer who was pissed. So he got bombarded with phone calls. And then like the first few, he would call and be like, this customer's pissed and you could have done this. I'd be like, hey man, yeah, you're right. We got to do a better job. Next phone call. After about like 2 days of this, he took 20 some phone calls of people lighting his ass up. He went back on it, but we forced him to talk to customers with his dumb idea, and he went back on it. And then it was like, he got humbled and it was like, all right, what are some other ideas we have to kind of go do this? But he would have never put that golden ticket dumbass idea in place if he actually had talked to customers before this, but he hadn't. And so we had to be the ones to kind of go force him to get back on the front line and see the ramifications of his actions.
So stated a different way, you don't talk to customers, you're disconnected from the process, or you're removed. So I'll tell 2 funny stories. The first one is this. There's a wildly popular TV show called Schitt's Creek, and the family is like super rich. And the lady, the mother, goes, oh, David, how much is a banana? $10, $20? Like a banana, one single banana. Like bananas are still less than $1, like 10, $20, right? She's removed. She has no clue what a banana costs. When I worked at NVR, our CEO he might have been chairman, but he was either CEO or chairman. He was also part owner of the Washington football team back when they were called the Redskins. And he had to go to a Monday night game, and like he had all these incredible things. Like he had access to a private jet, fly up, be in the owner's box, meet the coach, be on the sideline, all these different things. And what he's doing to a group of people, at the time I drove a 12-year-old car. He's telling all of us how little he wants to do what I would probably plop down a ton of money in like a fantasy type experience. And I'm one of the people who works there. Like you talk about like just shitting on your employees, like making them feel bad about their lot in life because you're bitching about this incredible thing. Like you're disconnected. You don't know what's happening, and you should be in a glass box kept away from anybody who's helping move the needle because you're so far disconnected from the process. So what I think is critical, and this is one of the things that I think you learned, and I think your former boss was the best ever, is Jack Welch. Jack Welch used to fly around in a private plane, but instead of bitching about going to the football game on Monday night, he would get in front of a round table of people who were touching the business and talk to them. And he would get in front of them and talk and say, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What aren't we doing? What's the supply chain problem? What's the customer saying? What's the impact on sales? That's how you stay connected. That is how you don't become some jackass that comes up with a Willy Wonka ticket program. You stay in there and you listen.
Frank, not only that, not only would Jack go get in front of all the employees, before he would do that, he would go meet with a bunch of executives. So when he went to Cincinnati and he's talking to a bunch of employees in the aircraft engines, he would say, I met with the CEO of Boeing last night and his top executives. Here's what they think about our newest product. Here's what they like. Here's what they don't like. Here's what they told me about the service. So he was never disconnected from the customer either, because he would sit in front of them and say, why don't we have more business with you? And, obviously when you're a superstar CEO, you get that interaction all the time. One thing Jack was awesome at was always staying in front of the customer. He was always in front of the biggest customers.
But that's how you stay connected and relevant in a business. No matter how big or small your business is you have to get down and dirty with the people who are doing the stuff. You must talk to them. I have a small business. Since we've started this podcast, I've gone from roughly 20 employees to 40, but in about a year. But what we pay attention to is all the little things. We have a daily call. We talk about good news. We talk about who's stuck. I can hear frustrations, like, and we encourage you, like, if you're frustrated with something, talk about it here. That's the important thing, because I stop what I'm doing to focus on that stuff because it's critical. But once you stop that focus, you centralize it, you get away from it, you lose sight of what's really important, is when it falls apart.
I think number 8, back to talent a little bit. I think you can feel it in a company when you interact with a company who sees talent as a commodity, as a cost to be minimized, to be shred. You can feel it. A company that just doesn't invest in people. If you're paying at the low end of the market, the lowest you can possibly get for people, you're paying for the lowest possible service you can give customers as well. Bezos, the Amazon, had just an awesome quote of, he said, I'd rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than hire one person who isn't focused on customers. And that's just kind of that relentless. And if you're going to get someone who's amazing with customers, you're not going to get away with paying them at the bottom of the market.
Right.
So I think it's impossible to talk about fantastic customer experience without talking about compensation of employees. I don't know. I maybe it's possible. I would find it nearly impossible to run any organization and pay at the bottom of the pay scale and get top of market customer experience.
You can't. You might get lucky, but you're going to get lucky once or twice. You can't get lucky as a business strategy.
Getting lucky means you hired some really good people who didn't quite know their market value yet.
Correct.
They're
going to figure it out.
You're hoping they're going to stay ignorant forever to the fact that you're underpaying them. Because if they're that good with customers, someone's going to pay them more at some point.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about the companies that make you feel good. So since 2007, I've lived in Charlottesville and Richmond, neither of which has a Neiman Marcus or a Nordstrom's. So I've had to rely on the internet to do shopping. And I've been a huge fan of Zappos for years. And what I love about Zappos is they tell you it'll be there in 2 days. It's usually there in 1. You can go and buy, 30 things, try it all on in your bedroom, put 29 of them back in the box and get reimbursed before the credit card is due.
You also love that they have all your favorite brands and plus sizes. You like that.
There's no question. Thank you, Ian. But that being the case, I love Zappos from that perspective. They pay incredibly well, they retain their talent, and they make the customer feel good. I don't stay at the Four Seasons a lot, but I do stay at the Ritz. But if either the Ritz or the Four Seasons, if I've stayed at either, you can feel the difference when you walk in. They treat you, they're trained well. The people who work the front desk at the Ritz or the Four Seasons are compensated differently, trained differently than people who are at a Holiday Inn or even like a Hyatt, even a higher end hotel. And you can feel that difference. They're able to answer your questions. They understand the resort. They know what the issues are and the questions. They can they're helpful. Hey, my temporary home for 3 days is here. These are the things that are important to me. They have all the answers. At 8 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, how long is it going to take me to get to the airport? Probably about 25 minutes with traffic. That's a really good thing. If you ask somebody that at a normal hotel, they have no idea. They're use Google. But that's the difference of a nice hotel. It's training, it's compensation.
Number 9, which is a little bit contrary. I think this is one of those best intentions goes wrong when you've got the customer is always right kind of mentality as a company, and you are a company that pretty much will make any exception for any customer. I feel, and I've always felt this way, I feel like exceptions are often the least customer friendly policy process, when you make a lot of exceptions to what is your normal strategy. So if you charge someone a fee on one interaction, but you waive it for the next person, and there's really no difference between the two people and what service they got, other than one asked you to waive. And the reason why I think that that's awful on customer experience is that word gets around that sometimes they waive the fee, sometimes they don't. And so if you don't waive the fee for me, I feel like now I have to ask. And if I don't ask, I'm the fool because I didn't ask. And so it makes me stressed. Now I got to go through a process of back and forth. It's a little bit like the car buying process. It's always been miserable. And I don't like negotiating for a car, but every time I've ever negotiated on a new car, Frank, I've negotiated $5,000 off every time. But if I just went in one time and bought a car and didn't negotiate, I would feel miserable leaving, knowing that I probably could have got another $5,000 off. I would feel like a fool for not having gone through that 3 hours of, let me talk to my manager, write the number down that you think would, like, all of that process. Every time I've ever bought from any dealership, I hate it, but I feel like if I don't do it, I'm a fool. And so the fact that there's exceptions and you have to push that hard to get it, it makes it a terrible customer experience.
Did you ever see the movie The Aviator? It's 10, 15 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio. That was on the other day. I watched it. And Leonardo DiCaprio is playing Hughes, and he gets called into Washington. And basically the guy, one of the senators, is trying to ask him, like, you're bribing people in the Air Force. And Howard Hughes, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, goes, well, that's the system, Senator. If you tell me there's a different system, I'll play by the different system, but this is the system you all set up, so I just play by the rules. I think it's a really good way of kind of stating what we're talking about with car purchasing. Car purchasing sucks. I think Carvana is trying to do what Rocket Mortgage did and trying to shuffle the deck in a little different way. I learned early in my career, Rayner was the one who taught me this. He's like, I always buy, this is a senior executive. He had tons of money. I was in my 20s, but he would talk about, he always bought a Mercedes. And what he would do is he would go to the Mercedes dealership and he would test drive and find out what car he wanted. And then he would call 2 or 3 of the dealerships. And this is before the internet was what the internet is today. And he called 2 or 3 car dealerships and he would negotiate the entire thing over email and the phone. And that's how he did it. And he did it. He took control. It's easier to be firm when you're not in front of somebody. And what I do in my car buying purchases, I do something similar. Is I usually kind of beat up on them before I get there, because to me, it's like I want to be in and out of that sleaze bucket environment as fast as possible. Like when I bought my last car, I bought it during COVID, and I told the guy before I got there, if I'm in and out in under 20 minutes, I'll pay you $100. And I gave him $100. Like I did not want to be there. So what you have to look at is the system flawed? How do you write it so it is better for you? Because some of these things just suck.
And I think if you're a manager, if people are always having to come to you with exceptions,
that's right.
You have to look at what is wrong with my process. This process is broken. If there's that many exceptions, you don't have a process. You don't have.
That's right. And as a manager, you're making yourself too self-important. We're talking about the thing we talked about above, which is you don't let your employees make decisions. What you're doing instead is you're making yourself the star and feeling important, and you're not empowering people under you. And
not all customers are worth keeping. There are customers that are just flat out wrong and that you don't want. So the customer is right. It's just bad for customer service half the time. The customer is usually right, but they're not always right. There's some jackasses out there that want to be your customer that you should say, find somewhere else to buy from.
That's right. And then the other thing is, if the customer is always right, your employee is often wrong. And if you're making your employee wrong, that's really bad for morale and all the things that we talked about. You must set criteria and metrics and things in place on what is and what is not allowable. And if your employee is doing the things that you allow, then you need to support your employee and not the customer. The employee is more important. If you want to look at why customer service falls, it's because you prioritize a jackass customer over a talented, well-compensated, competent employee. And that's where you start getting out of skew.
I think I love what you just said there. There's nothing more deflating, Frank, than when you're on the front line and you fight like hell to hold price, to hold terms, to hold delivery, to hold all the things your managers are always on you about, that your job is to be on the front line, defend it. And then that person works their way up the chain and they get like 2-3 levels higher to you, to someone who's it's not that important to. And they just send an email out saying, give this customer what they want, largely to save themselves time.
That's it.
There's nothing more deflating, because when a manager does that, it makes the front line think, what the hell am I fighting for? What
That's right.
I just give everyone that asks this. I'd rather, you made me feel stupid. You made me feel like all that work I put in to fight for my company wasn't worth it. At MVR, this happened all the time. If you got up to the chairman, you got whatever you wanted. He just wanted it to go away, treat the customer right. But the truth is, that's the same guy in the quarterly meeting that was on you about margins and you would look at him like, how do you think those margins happen? That because we give everyone what they want? No, on a daily basis, we are fighting for price so that you don't get those emails, but you don't see most of them. But everyone that gets you just say, drop your pants and give everything away. And it would be deflating to the people that are out there trained to go, hold the line on value and price.
Yeah, it undermines the work of the people on the front line. And what you start to do is if you're on the front line and you're not supported by your manager, what you start to do is you start to look at it and you start to think, maybe this company isn't good for me. Maybe this company doesn't have my back. Maybe I shouldn't push so hard. You start to ask yourself questions on, why am I doing this if nobody really cares? Like what that to me is what leads to bad customer service, and it leads to bad morale with employees, and eventually turnover, is because you start to undermine it. Now, let's just say you undermine your employee and you do it because you want to get something off your desk or something happens. The bad way to handle it is just to get it over with and be done with it. The good way is you say, hey, you call the employee and you said, I made an executive decision. I know you fought for this. I think you did everything right. I am here to tell you that I want you to continue to do that. In this particular instance, I saw an issue that was bigger. I made an exception to my rule because of this, but I think what you did was right. I don't want you to stop doing that. What's that?
I love that. I love everything.
You have to, because if you don't, then it all starts to unravel.
Give them the why of why you had to do it and why you felt compelled to break policy that time. But then encourage them that the next time, do everything the same way you did it this way.
That's it. And what we do, Ian, is we do that in sales training. Like we'll say, hey, last week this situation came up. I've already spoken to so-and-so about it. Let's address it as a group. And this is why we made an exception to that rule, but you just get ahead of it and talk about it.
So number 10, our final item on our list is hubris, which is your product is just too good, or you have a monopoly in some way. So the best example that we could come up with there's a fantastic Seinfeld episode, The Soup Nazi. And,
no soup for you.
No soup for you. And this guy makes the best soup in town and everyone loves the soup, but he is very particular about how you must behave as one of his customers, or he will kick your ass out and give you no soup.
No soup for you.
No soup for you. And there was a guy, there was a bar in DC.
Ian, hold on. Before you get into the bar, let's get into a couple things. What are your favorite things to do with beers?
Favorite things to do with what?
Beer.
What's my favorite thing to do with beer?
Yeah. Drink it and chug it.
Okay.
What is, I mean, isn't that like whenever we drink beer?
Isn't that what everyone does with beer is they drink beer?
Well, most people kind of sip it. You're more of an aggressive drinker and
okay,
you love to chug.
I drink beer. I didn't know what you were getting at there. Yes, yeah. I drink beer faster than the average bear. So there's a restaurant, a bar called The Saloon on U Street in DC. And it was a block from my house. And most of the bars around that area, they serve crappy beer, it's just
in plastic cups, it's sticky floors.
This bar had something like 1,000 different brands of beer. And the owner, we called him the beer Nazi. He was very particular about how you behaved when you were in his bar. It was a little basement saloon. There was no standing. If all of the stools and the chairs were taken up, you had to go wait outside. There was no standing. It was only for sitting. Beer was to be enjoyed. So he had Belgian beers. He had beers from all over the world. This menu was fantastic. And it was a great place to just go enjoy a few beers before you go out. But every once in a while I would get turned, I'd get a little too excited. I'd turned up, keyed up to go out. And he knew me by name. He knew Devo by name. He knew Brett by name. He knew a bunch of us by name.
I've been in there a couple times.
But if you got a little too loud, he didn't like yelling, which is, I also like to yell when I drink beer. And if you chugged a beer and he saw you, if you slammed one of his triple Bach, beers from Belgium, 9 degrees, if you did that, he brought you your receipt and he said, it's time for you to go. And he would kick you out. And the reason why we kept going back is, you could look at that as bad customer service, but really this kind of goes with the exceptions too. He wanted to have a certain environment there where people felt comfortable. It wasn't too loud. It wasn't too crazy. He believed really strongly about beer should be enjoyed and enjoyed slowly and tasted. And he didn't want craziness. So he would just say, guys, go across the street. They serve Pabst there. You can slam that all you want. He would kick us out. No more beer for you. And that was okay. That worked for me. But a lot of places, like I've been a DirecTV member forever. And the only reason I'm with DirecTV, reason is the NFL package.
Yep.
Only reason I want to watch the Lions on Sundays. So I keep this shitty cable service for 20 years and they treat you like garbage. If everyone else had the NFL package, I would not be with DirecTV. And that's hubris. They have me. And truthfully, they've been hemorrhaging customers for years, right? AT&T bought them. They've already tried to sell them. They're getting rid of them. And it's because they treat you like garbage. And captive businesses like that tend to give much worse customer service.
There's a service that is ripping you off right now and nobody thinks about it. There's a fantastic documentary called The Social Dilemma. And what it talks about is all the social media stuff. Like, it's incredible to me what pops up in my news feeds. They're listening to you. They're monitoring us. They're popping it in there. It's insane. Like, that is not customer service. We're captive. The product is incredible. Like, what you can accomplish on Google. Like, how many times a day do you open Google? I must do it 100+ times a day, right? You get in and you do something. How often do you look at Facebook? Like, these people do not treat you well. But their product is insane. You don't need to remember anything anymore. You can just go to Google. So like, you can look anything up. Like, that's a pretty cool trade-off. But because of it, Google is insanely profitable, spends money on anything they want, and they treat you like shit. And that is where the hubris is. It's a funny example with the soup Nazi. It's less funny, in my opinion, with Google and Facebook because they're doing things to you that you don't even realize.
So sometimes your product can be so good, and just even think about any major city you've ever been to.
Right.
You don't want to eat at a restaurant near the Eiffel Tower in Paris. You don't want to eat at a restaurant near the Colosseum in Rome. You don't want to eat at a restaurant near the Washington Monument in DC. God, you don't. There's nothing with the walking distance other than hot dog stands. Times Square, right? You think about all these major cities in the world. The higher the rent is, usually the crappier they treat you because they know you don't know where else to go. And so they don't have to put a lot of time into their menu, into the service. It's, that tends to be the same with all businesses that feel like they have a captive audience.
Correct. So let's close this.
Bring us home, Frankie. Bring us home. If you're an owner of a business, if you're a manager, an executive, what do you take from all the stuff that we talked about today?
So what I'll tell you is this. As the owner of a business, if you don't believe in these policies, neither will anyone else. And if you are going to enforce these policies, you must back them up in your own actions. I talked earlier about if you're going to make an exception to your rule, you must say why, and you must deal with it, and you must own it. And you must talk about it openly. We made an exception for these reasons. I was telling Ian a story before we started to record, and I'll tell it now. So I have a situation unfolding right now in my business. Someone's filing a complaint, and it's going to get kind of ugly. But yesterday I was doing a webinar and I didn't finish till after 6 o'clock. And as I'm leaving, two of my employees, should have been home, but left by now. One of them gets here at 7 a.m. She usually leaves at 3:30. She was waiting for me. I'm like, oh, what's wrong? So they came inside and they told me about this situation that's brewing. And the way that I felt as an owner of a business that's been in business for over 12 years now, that has a culture and has good people, I said, okay, this seems like an annoyance. But what I didn't feel is what I would have felt 12 years ago. And I didn't have a culture. I didn't have this talented people. I didn't feel worried. I don't feel like we're in the wrong. I don't think we did something that was egregious. I think we have an issue. It's going to become something that we give to our attorney and we deal with. It's going to be a problem, but it isn't something that's a major gaffe, or it's going to be something that causes me to lose a lot of sleep, because I think my team did the right thing. I think it's well documented. I think we have pictures. I think we have proof. I think everything we could possibly have that shows that we're on the right side of this, we have in the file. We have everything papered. It's done right. The other thing is it's communicated. As soon as we heard about it, everyone started to talk. And by the time it made it to me, everyone had talked about it that needed to. That's a system. That's through the right training. That's through people who are bought in. That is through people who want to be here. It's through people who value the customer, but value the company even more and value the mission and what we're trying to accomplish. And by having those things in place, we take something that could be a major issue and we're like, oh, it's been neutralized because it was handled properly up front.
You trust the culture that you've built. You trust the team that you've built. You know you have an issue. You know that there wasn't any malicious wrongdoing or
that's right,
complete incompetence and leading to it. And that's, if you build the right team, you build the right culture, you kind of trust in those things, and you just deal with customer issues as they come up, and you consider them one-offs, which is what they are.
We might have made a mistake, but we didn't do something shady. We didn't treat you like the airlines or a crappy bank or a car dealership. Like, we might have made a mistake in here and we can fix that, but we didn't do something intentional or shady or any of those things. And not only that, we have it all papered and there's proof, because we have a culture and a system and we follow up and we talk. And that's what this comes down to. It follows everything that we said, either do or don't do. We're on the right side of those decisions. And it's because we have intent around not having crappy customer service. I am in a business where most of the people in my business I compete against are wholesalers. Wholesalers are the people that you see on the internet flinging $100 bills or standing on Lamborghinis. And what they talk about is how great they are. And they don't focus on the customer. And what we do is we focus on the customer. Are we always perfect? No. Is every customer right? No. But if we make it about you, the customer, what we end up doing is differentiating ourselves. Everybody else makes it about price. We make it about you. How do we help solve your problem? And by doing that, what we end up doing is we get a better deal, because we're really getting at the heart of what the problem is and we're helping solve it and provide solutions. And we're doing it the right way.
And one thing I know, Frank, as co-hosts, we make sure that we take care of our dozens and dozens of amazing, loyal customers that tune in every single week. So you can keep trusting as a loyal listener that we're going to give you everything we got. Our customer service is perfect.
Not only that, we got a text this morning asking for a shout out. So Mr. Paxson, we love you. And I bet you can use this stuff to continue to dominate the real estate market in Indiana.
Hey, fantastic episode, Frank.
Always a pleasure, Ian.
Hey, dude.